Hey everyone, so Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald has finally hit theaters, and we are finally able to get some answers to questions, some burning questions we've had for the past 2 years since the release of the original film. Now, some of those questions are answered, but there are about 1 billion more other questions that we have after watching Crimes of Grindelwald. Now, Crimes of Grindelwald only picks up a couple of months after the events of the first film, in which we return with the adventures of Newt Scamander as he is tasked by Albus Dumbledore to help stop the influential wizard Gellert Grindelwald. In terms of the story, Crimes of Grindelwald was just sort of okay for me. It was good, but not necessarily great. I felt like most of the film I was playing catch up with a lot of the themes and things that were happening story-wise, even though it only takes place a couple of months after the events of the first film. Now, what I mean by that is not necessarily that I haven't seen the first film in a while. I actually just watched it recently. What I mean by that is just there's so much different information being thrown at you and things that have happened over the past few months that are completely different from what they were in the first film. It's kind of overwhelming. Not only with that, but throw in the fact that we have to deal with so many different characters, different names that are being thrown at us from various family trees, in combination with the various hierarchies of several ministries of magic that we are involved with here. It gets overwhelming at times, and it's not necessarily a bad thing because this sort of world, wizarding world, has a very deep sort of going on here. Like, it's very deep in terms of lore and things that you can actually dig into. J.K. Rowling has built this world very deep in terms of characters, world building, all of that stuff. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just so overwhelming when you throw various name drops one after the other and you're trying to remember who that character was. And if you're not a super big Harry Potter world, Wizarding World fan, that can be a little bit tough after watching Crimes of Grindelwald. In terms of action and visuals, I feel like this film was actually really brilliant. The CG was actually very excellent. Something that I was really concerned about was not enough Fantastic Beasts to really have a lot of influence in this sequel, because we did have plenty of new ones in the first one that we hadn't seen the entire Harry Potter franchise. Now, in this second one, I was actually very pleasantly surprised. We not only get plenty of Fantastic Beasts, but they actually look really cool. I wish we got a little bit more time with a couple of them. We do get the return of the Nifflers, which I absolutely loved seeing them again. We get involved again with Pick, the little green guy that's always with Newt, little plant creature. But in terms of new sort of creatures, we do get some, and I definitely appreciated that, and they looked fantastic, as the title will tell you, Fantastic Beasts. But I just feel like we didn't quite get enough of them, and I would have liked to see a little bit more of that. But again, how deep in magic zoology can you really go with and carry sort of a franchise without sort of having that action element, that really good storyline, things like that. So I like how they try and blend those two and how the creatures kind of come into play with that storyline, and how Newt actually encounters them. There's actually a couple of really clever interactions there, but I feel like some of the Fantastic Beasts, there's one in particular that he name drops, and then he sort of just moves on. We get a glimpse of the creature during the film, but he sort of he says this is a creature from this area, and then he just sort of moves on. But there is another creature that's super big that has a couple of great scenes throughout the movie. So it does have enough creatures in it. I just wish we would got a little bit more of that and a little bit more variety like we did with the first film. And in terms of the acting, I felt like everyone did well. I definitely feel like Eddie Redmayne is not only the main character, he is also the heart, the soul, and the moral compass of the franchise. He's absolutely brilliant. I wouldn't change a thing there. In terms of Grindelwald, who is Johnny Depp, we didn't really get to see a whole lot of him in the first film. He's at the very tail end of it, so I was a little bit not sure how to receive him in this film. Now, he's been under a bit of scrutiny since the whole selection and all things in his personal life, which I'm not going to get into any of that, but I feel like he was very kind of replaceable. He was kind of a villain that it could have been anyone, any big Hollywood actor, and it probably would have been the same role. I don't feel like this was Johnny Depp's role to really own, very much like his Captain Jack Sparrow. I just feel like he did an okay job. How I did like, however, was Jude Law as young Dumbledore. I think that he did actually a great job. I wish there would have been more of him, but they gave us enough that I was intrigued by him, but not sort of and sort of, I don't really know how to say it. Like, I was definitely intrigued by him, but he didn't feel like he was over influencing in the film itself. He was enough in it, and I think we're going to get more of him later in the franchise, which I'm really excited about because I did like him. He does play the version of Dumbledore that's still very young, charismatic, a little bit arrogant as well. Not quite that wise Dumbledore we all know from the Harry Potter franchise and his era at Hogwarts, but I think that's a good thing because even in the books, Dumbledore says that he is very different as he is now during the Harry Potter era than he was before. So having that little bit of a different Dumbledore is definitely not a bad thing. I actually like that a lot, and I really look forward to Jude Law more as Dumbledore in the future films. Now, in terms of negatives, I only have very, very few. I feel like the film was a little bit disjointed in times in terms of what storylines were happening with various characters. I felt like we kept sort of flip-flopping to various storylines that didn't really connect that well. Not all of them really got tied up or sort of ended in a way that you were actually intrigued by. Another thing is that some characters just did not feel the same as they were in the previous film. Mainly Kowalski and Queenie. Not so much Kowalski. He's got a little bit of situation going on that might be influencing what his character is being different, but Queenie is a complete turnaround, complete 180 from what she was in the last movie. I mean, she just goes a little bit psycho, way more than I would have ever expected Queenie to go. Just not a direction I expected her to go, but that might be for another video. But it just didn't feel like the same character we got to know over the course of the last film. Maybe that's sort of the direction they're going with. I'm not entirely sure, but it just felt like such a big departure. It almost didn't even seem like the same character. And speaking of Kowalski and Queenie very quickly, I did do a video a couple of months back about a theory that I had about why Kowalski is able to get his memories back to be able to come back into the fold for Crimes of Grindelwald. Now, I did get a ton of comments on that video saying that it was because he had mainly good memories and not bad memories, which is what that sort of rain situation had happened with in the first film. They did kind of explain that same exact situation, that it was because he had more good memories than bad, that he was able to remember most of it. I still kind of think that's a bit of BS, and here's why. This can be a whole nother video that I can piggyback off of that on, but just very quickly. I feel like it was kind of BS because he was a bit under the influence, I'm not going to say of what, when he gives that explanation. So in terms of him explaining why he was able to do it, I feel like there could be some other outside factors, mainly involving Queenie, that is causing him to be able to have a little bit different interaction than he did originally. Also, that brings up the question as to why his character at the end of the first film, when he sees Queenie in the bakery, he sort of just touches his neck and smirks, as opposed to being like, "Queenie, what's up? You know, what's happening with Newt? Do you remember that whole thing that happened?" And not being quite as excited to see her and just sort of having a little smirk. I feel like he just did not have the reaction that he should have if he was able to retain the majority of the memories from the first movie. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, back to the Crimes of Grindelwald. I felt like the movie was good, just not great. But that's also the same sort of impression that I got from the first film as well. When I left the theater, I thought it was good, just not great. I had a lot of questions and things that I had to really go back and analyze. And after multiple viewings, I actually grew to really like the first Fantastic Beasts. And I feel like that's what's going to happen very much with the second one as well. After I get to see it a couple more times, I'll feel like I'll be able to get a better grasp on what is exactly happening, number one, who a lot of these characters they're talking about are, with having the sort of somewhat knowledge about the Harry Potter universe, but just not in a deep dive. But I feel like it'll help me get a better grasp, and they definitely did lay plenty of breadcrumbs, a lot more than the first film, in terms of setting up future storylines, things that could be happening in the franchise, a bunch of other stuff. I think this franchise is supposed to go on for about 5 films or so. So we got 3 more to go-ish. But overall, I think it was a pretty good movie. Not the best, but I'd still definitely recommend it for any Harry Potter fans or Wizarding World fans out there, and especially fans of the first film. It is definitely worth going to see in theaters. And for that reason, the overall grade that I'm going to give Fantastic Beasts 2, The Crimes of Grindelwald, the overall grade of a B. Now, the film is definitely not perfect, but I feel like it's definitely getting slammed in terms of reviews online through various media sources. It's not that bad. There's been much worse. What was the worst part of Fantastic Beasts for me was definitely some of the trailers beforehand, like the kid that becomes King Arthur movie or whatever, and then like the Ugly Dolls movie. There were a couple of really bad trailers, but there were some good ones, including Detective Pikachu and a couple of other ones, but that's nothing to do with Fantastic Beasts. But other than that, those are all my thoughts on Fantastic Beasts. It releases this weekend. It is now in theaters, so you guys can go check it out now. After you do check it out, make sure you come back. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Also, make sure to subscribe, as I probably will have a couple of theory videos and things that I have just based on my thoughts of what happened in Fantastic Beasts: Crimes of Grindelwald. So make sure you're subscribed for that. But other than that, that's all my thoughts on the movie. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.